In this video, we're going to add validation to our checkout form. So before we submit the form to the back end, let's perform some validation. So we'll check for required fields. We'll also make sure we have the minimum length on certain fields and so on. So Angular has a set of built-in validation rules that we can make use of. So there's the required validation, must be a non-empty value. Min, max, must be a number greater than or equal to a value for min, max less than or equal to a value. There's also min length and max length, basically checking the length of a string accordingly. We can also apply a regular expression pattern. And we can also make use of the email format. And there's some other validation rules, and you can make use of the link here on the slide to get the details on those other validations. And there's some additional validation features available. We can define custom validators, make use of cross-field validation, and also use asynchronous validators. And if you'd like to see code examples of this, you can make use of the Angular documentation for form validation. For our checkout form validation, these are our requirements from the boss. He wants to make sure that all fields are required, and also the email address has the proper email format. And then for the credit card field, only numbers are allowed, 16 digits. And for the CVC number, only numbers are allowed and only 3 digits. Alrighty, so here's our development process. So the first step is specifying the validation rules for the form controls. Then we define the getter methods to access the form controls. Next, we update the HTML template to display the error messages. And then finally, we add the event handler to check the validation status when the submit button is clicked. Alrighty, so starting with step 1 of specifying the validation rules for form controls, recall that a form field is represented by the form control object. So we create the form control and pass in initial value and validators. So here's the basic syntax: new form control, initial value, and validators. So as an example, new form control, we pass in the initial value of an empty string. And then we pass in the validators, and we pass in an array of validators here. So if you only had one validator, you simply pass in a single item itself. If you have multiple, you make use of an array. So in this example here, we're saying that this given field is required, and then the minimum length is 2. All right, so let's pull this together with an example with our checkout form. So we have our checkout form group. We have this customer form builder group, and then we make use of first name, new form control, empty string, and then we give our validators. Validators.required, and also validators.min length of 2. So that's for the first name control. And then we do the same thing here for last name. So validators.required and min length of 2. For email address, we'll change things up slightly here. So we have the validators.required. However, we'll make use of this validators.pattern. So we'll pass in a regular expression to check on the email format. So this expression here will work for an example like, anava@gmail.com. So now you're probably wondering here, why aren't we using Angular's built-in validators.email? Well, validators.email only checks for some text at more text or whatever. So based on this, the following is valid email format. So Anil@LoveToCode or Anil@Gmail. These are valid emails based on validators.email. Okay, but that's too lenient. That's not really what we want, because this doesn't really check for the domain name format like Anil@LoveToCode.com or Anil@Gmail.com. So as a result, we use a regular expression with the validators.pattern. So that's why I'm using the pattern approach on the previous slide, because validators.email is too weak, too lenient. And the validators.pattern gives me more control over that format. Now, one final thing I want to mention here is that validators.email and validators.pattern, it only checks the format of the email address. It does not verify if the email address is real. Okay, so this validator, it doesn't go online to the internet and check to make sure this is a real email address or whatever. It's simply checking the format of that email address.